She thought she had it all figured out, until his betrayal shattered everything. But the truth she uncovered was more shocking than she ever imagined. Watch as secrets unfold and justice is served. Sunday morning. The quiet comfort of a weekend day was shattered by the eerie stillness in the room. I woke up, stretched, and immediately realized that the side of the bed next to me was empty. At first, I thought maybe Brandon had gotten up early like he often did to go to the gym or do something I hadn't noticed. But as I opened my eyes and looked around, everything felt off. The room was silent. No soft breathing from him, no familiar noises in the house. I got out of bed and quietly made my way to the kitchen, but my eyes immediately landed on the fridge. There was a piece of paper stuck there, taped down as if Brandon wanted to make sure I saw it. The scrawl on the paper was simple, raw, and to the point. Goodbye. Never loved you anyway. Shock hit me. My heart dropped like someone had just knocked the wind out of me. Confusion, anger, and above all, an overwhelming pain flooded my chest. I had spent years as a forensic accountant, dealing with financial fraud, catching lies and deceit. I was used to secrets, to people hiding the truth. But this was different. This was from the man I had built my life with. I had prepared myself for something, but not this. Though the pain seared through me, I knew that this was it. That it was time to face the truth. Brandon hadn't just left me. He had done something far worse. And I was going to uncover it, no matter how much it might destroy everything I thought I knew. The pain from the note Brandon had left me lingered. But something else started to settle in, anger. As I stood in the kitchen, holding that simple piece of paper, I tried to think back, to piece together the months leading up to this moment. And then it hit me. The signs had been there, subtle but undeniable. I had been so caught up in my daily routine that I hadn't noticed how much had shifted. A few months ago, Brandon had started showing an unusual interest in our finances. At first it seemed harmless. He asked about our retirement accounts, about investments, about things he had never cared to learn about before. I had brushed it off as him just being curious, maybe wanting to get more involved. But then the calls started. Mysterious conversations he would quickly end as soon as I walked into the room. The business trips that seemed to come out of nowhere, with no real explanation. It was all adding up, but I couldn't bring myself to confront him. Something told me that the truth wasn't something I was ready to face yet. So I did what I knew best. I began to track every transaction, every dollar that moved through our accounts. I was a forensic accountant after all. Catching financial crimes was what I did for a living. It was second nature to me. As the days passed, I started noticing discrepancies. Money quietly moved from our joint accounts to ones I didn't recognize. He was buying things, expensive items, luxury goods, without any explanation. It didn't take long before I realized that Brandon wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to escape, to vanish without a trace. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. I needed more proof, more evidence of his betrayal. This was bigger than just the hurt of his departure. I needed to understand how far he had gone, and I was going to find out, no matter how deep his lies went. As the days passed after Brandon's departure, I had no time to wallow in self-pity. The anger from his note fueled a different fire in me. A determination to take control of the situation. I wasn't going to let him leave me like this without a fight. I had spent too many years building my career as a forensic accountant, and I wasn't about to let my own husband outweep me. I began moving our savings. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about being prepared for whatever Brandon had planned. I flagged our accounts, transferred funds into secure places, and started taking note of every suspicious transaction. I even sent copies of everything I had gathered to my lawyer, knowing that I would need legal protection for the battle ahead. But it wasn't enough just to stop him from draining our accounts. I needed to understand everything. I needed to know how deep his betrayal ran. The more I dug, the more I uncovered. Brandon wasn't just some unfaithful husband. He was part of something much bigger. I found records of previous marriages, each one ending in the same way. The woman was left broken, financially ruined, and emotionally devastated. And there was a disturbing pattern emerging. A pattern that connected him to a network of financial fraud that spanned across states. It wasn't just me he had betrayed. It was every woman he had ever married. He had been using them, draining their savings, and disappearing with no trace. The weight of the discovery hit me hard, but it also gave me clarity. This wasn't just about my own pain anymore. I had a bigger mission: to stop him, to protect others like me, and to take down the network he was a part of. I wasn't going to let Brandon get away with this. It was time to become the hunter, not the hunted. I thought I had one. After everything, Brandon's betrayal, the evidence I had gathered, his eventual arrest, I believed that the worst was over. I could finally breathe, finally begin to move on from the nightmare he had created. But then one evening my phone rang, and the voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. "Isla, it's Kelly, Brandon's sister," the voice said, trembling with urgency. "I'm in danger. I need your help." I froze. Kelly. I had assumed she was already in custody, locked up by the FBI for her involvement in her brother's schemes. But here she was calling me. She claimed she had escaped, that someone else was threatening her, and that she held crucial information that could help me bring down the entire network Brandon was part of. My heart raced. This was it. The missing piece I had been searching for. She insisted we meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I needed answers, and if Kelly truly had information to help, I wasn't going to let my emotions get in the way. I arrived at a small cafe, the dim light casting shadows on the walls as I waited for her. I tried to steady my nerves, but something felt off. When she walked in, her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously. "Thank God you came," she said, sitting down across from me. "I know everything. I've been gathering evidence too, against Brandon, against the whole operation. I'm not the victim here, Isla. I'm the key." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. What did she mean? I hadn't expected this, hadn't prepared for her to turn the tables. She smiled grimly, leaning in closer. "I was helping him, Isla. I always have. I was the one who helped him disappear before the FBI caught on. And now I've been keeping track of every move you've made, every document you sent them." I stared at her in disbelief, the weight of her words crashing down on me. Kelly wasn't a victim. She had been playing me all along, using me to expose the FBI's plans, pulling me into a trap of her own making. I was a pawn, just like Brandon's other victims. As realization set in, I felt the ground shift beneath me. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. Brandon was just one piece of a much larger puzzle, and Kelly was no longer the ally I had hoped for. Now I was facing a new threat, one even more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The true masterminds behind the fraud network were still out there, and they had been watching me all along. I never thought I would see Brandon again, at least not on my terms. But when his message arrived, I felt a strange mix of disbelief and determination. "Isla, I'm sorry. Can we talk? Just one last time." I knew exactly what he was trying to do. Get me to feel sympathy, let down my guard. And I had every intention of playing along. I agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind of place where no one would recognize us. As soon as I walked in, I spotted him right away, looking disheveled, his usual confidence replaced with a nervous energy that I could almost taste in the air. His eyes brightened when he saw me, and he stood up almost too eagerly. "I'm really sorry, Isla. I've been going through some things. I didn't mean for it to get this far." His voice trailed off, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. I played my part, feigning concern as I sat down across from him. "I've lost so much because of you, Brandon," I said softly, my voice shaky with what I pretended was regret. "I don't know what to do anymore. The money. Everything. I'm so lost." I saw the flicker of hope in his eyes. This was it, his moment to reclaim the money he thought was still within his reach. "I can fix it, Isla. Just trust me. If you help me now, I swear I'll make things right," he said, reaching across the table. But I wasn't the woman who had trusted him before. As his words poured out, I let him dig his own grave. With every lie he told, every desperate plea, I took mental notes. And just as he thought he had me, I smiled, pulled out the folder I had kept hidden under the table, and placed it in front of him. "Tell me again, Brandon. How do you plan to fix this?" I asked as I watched the realization dawn on him. His lies were exposed and he had no way out. As Brandon's lies crumbled before me, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just his betrayal. There had to be a bigger network, a larger operation behind everything he'd done. My eyes fell back on the evidence I had carefully collected, the accounts, the transactions, and the money that had disappeared without a trace. But one thing in particular stood out. The offshore account Brandon had used, one that had seemed suspicious from the beginning. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that I was missing something. I decided to dig deeper, spending hours scouring through financial records. What I found shocked me. The offshore account wasn't just linked to Brandon. It was connected to a global investment firm I had worked with years ago. A company I had worked at when I was just starting my career in forensic accounting. At the time, I had no idea what the company was truly involved in. But now, looking back, I realized that it had been part of a much larger web of financial fraud. A web I had unknowingly been a part of. The connection was too much to ignore. Brandon had used that firm to launder money, hiding his trail behind legitimate business transactions. I felt the floor drop beneath me as I realized how deep this went. This wasn't just about Brandon anymore. This was a network of criminals that spanned continents. But there was something even more unsettling, something I wasn't ready for. Just as I began to process this new layer of the puzzle, my phone rang. I picked it up, expecting to hear another lawyer or an FBI agent. But the voice on the other end was one I hadn't heard in years. "Isla, it's Ethan," the voice said. "I need to talk to you. Now." Ethan Carter. A man I had worked with closely when I first started at that investment firm. He had always been trustworthy, reliable, and one of the few people I could count on. I had thought he retired years ago, leaving the industry behind. But now, his voice on the other end of the phone was filled with urgency. "I know what you found. And I know you're going to need my help," he said. "I'm one of the founders of that company you're looking into. But don't worry, I've been working with the FBI for months now. I've gathered evidence that could help you bring this whole operation down." I sat frozen as he continued, telling me about a secret project he had been working on with the FBI, exposing the exact network that had ensnared Brandon. He had video footage of Brandon speaking to one of his associates, detailing plans to flee the country and continue his fraudulent activities. The truth was more twisted than I had ever imagined. What I didn't expect, however, was for Ethan to reveal something else. The connection he had to the investigation wasn't just as an ally. He had been in the midst of this operation, watching it unfold from the inside. The man I had once trusted was no longer the person I remembered. He had his own secrets, and the more I learned, the more I began to question everything. As I hung up, the weight of the new information settled in. Ethan was helping me, yes, but he was also part of the world I was trying to expose. My trust in him had been shaken, and I couldn't help but wonder how many others around me had secrets of their own. What was once a straightforward quest for justice now felt like a maze of hidden motives and personal agendas. Everyone, it seemed, had their own reasons for being involved in this mess, and I was caught in the middle. With the evidence I had gathered, thanks to Ethan, the FBI, and my own relentless pursuit, Brandon's plan to escape had been completely exposed. The web of lies he had carefully spun around me and others began to unravel piece by piece. What started as a quiet, personal betrayal was now the subject of a full-scale investigation, and I had the proof to bring him down. The FBI, armed with the documentation and recordings Ethan had provided, moved quickly. They arrested Brandon before he could flee the country. As they escorted him out of his apartment, I watched from a distance, unable to look away. For a brief moment, I saw the arrogance that had always defined him in his eyes, the belief that he was untouchable, that he could always manipulate his way out of trouble. But now there was nothing but defeat. Brandon faced a litany of charges: financial fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and conspiracy. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He had used every trick in the book to manipulate people, and now he was about to pay the price. The trial was a long and grueling process, but when the judge finally pronounced his sentence, 25 years in federal prison, it felt like the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. I sat in that courtroom, my hands clenched tightly, but my heart oddly calm. I had never imagined this day would come, but here it was. Justice had been served. But it wasn't just about Brandon. As I looked at him, handcuffed and helpless, I realized that I wasn't just getting back at him for his betrayal. I was reclaiming my own power. All those years of feeling helpless and insignificant, caught in his web of lies, were gone. I had taken control. I had outsmarted him. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like myself again. Strong. Unstoppable. The courtroom doors had closed on Brandon's case, but my journey was far from over. I had once been a victim of his manipulation, but now I was a force to be reckoned with. With the experience I gained from bringing him to justice, I found myself drawn deeper into the world of financial fraud investigations. No longer just a forensic accountant, I became a trusted consultant for the FBI, working alongside them to tackle cases that spanned across the country. The very expertise that had helped expose Brandon's crimes was now being used to help others, victims like me who had been deceived by the charming faces of con men. I had a new purpose now, to help those who were trapped, those who didn't know how to protect themselves. Over time, I built a network of strong, resilient women who had been through what I had, and together we supported each other. Each woman in the group shared her story of betrayal, and in that we found solidarity and strength. We had all been victims at one point, but now we were reclaiming our power. As I looked back on everything I had endured, I realized something important. The pain and the heartbreak had only made me stronger. I had survived, and I had emerged from the ashes not only intact but more determined than ever. The message I wanted to share with anyone who would listen was simple. We can face betrayal, we can face loss, but we do not have to be defined by them. The strength that lies within us is far greater than the lies that others tell. Brandon may have thought he could break me, but he had chosen the wrong opponent. I was no longer the helpless woman caught in his web. I was the one who had outsmarted him, and in doing so I had found my true power.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for updates on new videos. See you next time.